Right.
Be the first thing Chris sees.
He's like,
What is
oh
wrong with
God,
you?
what do we allow these guys to do?
Exactly. All right. So workflow. What is it that you're? Let's see. Following a recipe. The cake. Help me understand what you and Chris and Ashley were looking at with regard to workflows and how this can impact the business.
Well, so a lot of businesses operate off of basically what's tribal knowledge. Go talk to Susan about how to enter a PO or get a credit card payment reimbursed or things like that. They operate off of tribal knowledge, and while that's okay to a certain level, as you start to scale, and I take a difference between grow and scale. As you start to grow, as you start to develop processes and business units, that tribal knowledge tends to become a choke point. So you start to have to define what workflows are and what it means to actually get a reimbursement. And then within that, part of what it means to business, to your direct question, is does going to get an expense report verified or a PO written or a reimbursement, does that open the business up to security potential compromise if it's not a documented process? So what we're starting to do is trying to delve into the workflow as an efficiency base of the business so that you can interchange people, put the right people in the right seat without disturbing the workflow. Like, hey, go see Susan. Well, Susan's not there anymore. It's now Debbie. Oh, yeah, I meant go see Debbie. Whereas if you have a workflow, go to account manager or accounts receivable to get your reimbursement form. What does that look like as far as an overall workflow across all the units of business for both efficiency and security? So again, in our four pillars, to increase profitability, increase efficiency, and decrease risk, all of those things basically mean you have to start with a workflow.
So let's back into that. Um, and I want to show you kind of what Tech Squared has been working on. And we'll talk about kind of what that means. Get this sized right, and then I'll share it. Share. Oh, okay.
So regardless of the project you're looking at,
So some of what I'm doing is backing up, and we're going to define some terms
okay.
so that as you have some of these conversations, as we talk about workflows, as we talk about process, assuming you can see my screen now,
Yeah, I can.
um, the point is some of this is common language, right? And so what I mean by that is we talk about workflows, but they can be very challenging to define. The number of people that go, oh yeah, I love writing process. Why, right? Why is it so difficult? There's several functions within it. Number one, um, from C-level, because we have a mature industry, and most industries will have something similar, on occasion, we go through and we rank all of these different areas that need a process. 10 different areas, different sections within the areas, right? And what we will typically do is rank them, right? A lot of people do, it does not exist as rare. That's something that if a business is functional, they're doing it ad hoc, or they've kind of verbally agreed on a way to do it, but it's not anywhere documented, to your point. Um, I would suggest ad hoc is every time there's an expense, somebody asks, what do I do with this? A decision is made at that point. Undocumented, but attempting to perform is everybody recognizes that we go to Debbie. What happens is, as it starts to become documented, folks recognize that the person is not necessarily the right way to document, and so it is done based on role. Okay. Couple of,
So
go ahead.
one of the things that I've heard for a number of years is people move into a new house and they're like, yeah, the panel labeling on the electrical panel is all off. I'm like, yeah, because they named it Kim's room or Steve's room, or
Correct.
not master bedroom, guest bedroom one, guest bedroom two. So that you don't know where to go. You don't know where Kim slept. So you don't know where that breaker actually controls. Versus, to your point, having a role defined or a bedroom label on that panel. Basically, it says, oh, this is bedroom three, so that must go to this breaker. Same thing with your identification of the role of, oh, I need to go to AR or
Correct. And
accounts
so
payable.
what you find is in the short term, businesses, smaller businesses, less organized businesses um, tend to function in what you've heard me call an operational maturity level of muscle and feel, which is very much in that ad hoc, undocumented area
Mm-hmm.
that says this came up. How do we handle it? We'll handle it this way because that feels like the right thing to do. Where you see that in the MSP industry is inbound, an inbound reactive ticket, right? Everything works pretty smooth as people are doing things until something that needs an escalation comes in and there's no way. And so it is muscle and feel. What starts to happen is as people start to document, they start to find exceptions, but what they are looking to do is document what good looks like. And so 90% of the time, how do we want to go about this? We're always going to have the idea is to minimize it. But if we can get things down to a 10% exception rate, 90% of the time, we do it this way. Now, in defining that, what happens is for C-level, for us, because they are operational coaching, we go through a 5-phase approach. And I would suggest that any business can do this, right? There's a lot. Google, if you go, what is a call answering process for reception? Google's going to give you a bazillion results. The point is, you find that what other folks have done, you customize it to your business, you train staff, everyone, you communicate and train to everyone what that new process is going to be. And then you launch the implementation, you launch that new process, right? And so some people, because of muscle and feel, may already be doing it the way that you're going to document it. But the idea is to train everyone to the new, and sometimes that training can be external as well, right? Communication to clients. Hey, instead of you getting direct to a person, starting November 1, you're going to go to an IVR and you press 2. or you press 1, or, if you need support. Where we have seen this is as we have changed our on-call process, we have to communicate that out to the clients, right? If you dial the support phone number after hours and IVR is going to pick up, you will have two choices. Press 1, it will leave a message. It will be picked up on the next business day, entered into our system, and it will be addressed. If it is critical and it's an emergency, press 9. It will call the engineers on call, the engineers that are signed on call at that day. If they are unable to pick up immediately, leave a voicemail, and it will call the on-call technicians every 15 minutes until someone picks up that message and calls you back. The most difficult part of process or workflow development is following up, inspecting what you expect. Are they doing it this way? And if not, what do you do with it?
Would that be most difficult because, I mean, because you're really kind of starting there when you begin to transition out of the muscle and feel. So is it more difficult to kind of, because I see that as, phase 5, and people say, okay, we get to phase 5, we're done. When in reality, when you look at the inspect what you expect, that basically puts you back to at least phase 3, if not phase 2, because,
Correct.
one of the
It
biggest things
is,
about leadership
it
is,
is a loop, and you're 100% dead on. It is a leadership issue.
Mhm.
The most challenging reason for phase 5 is because of muscle memory.
Right, right.
Ask someone to answer the phone differently and see
It,
how long it takes them to actually do it.
it is so funny when people hear me answer the phone. They're like, you knew it was me, or do you not have my number saved? I'm like, why? They're like, well, you said, good afternoon, Aaron Peters. I'm like, yeah, I say that when my wife calls,
Yes.
because it's literally an ingrained, to your point, muscle memory of how I answer the phone. Um, and that's kind of to your point of coming out of muscle and feel to a documented process. Somebody might be doing it the way you want it to be done, but that's part of the inspect what you expect is the iteration that can we get this better. That's part of that 1%, and always trying to improve efficiency and drive profitability. You and I had a conversation years ago about how you had people answer the phone at Tech Squared and the verbiage that you had them use based on several studies. Good afternoon, Tech Squared, this is Carolyn, or I honestly forget the script. Because
It's in our documentation, in the published document. Now you see why phase 5 is difficult. What do you mean you didn't go look at it and adopt it and do it correctly? So phase 5 is very much about leadership. It is are they doing it the way it's documented? Is it incorrectly done such that it harms the process? Is it incorrectly done that we need to go back and train again, launch, inspect, train, launch, inspect? When we first moved over to the triage methodology, triage and dispatch, I have literally trained that with PowerPoint in meetings at least 10 times.
oh yeah,
And that does not include the times I've fussed about it. Fussed being a leadership term for gone directly to the person responsible for that role and asked them to adjust behavior. Now, the science behind, thank you for calling Tech Squared, this is Sean. The intent being, recognize they've called the company and identify the person they are speaking to.
Because everything else is, and this is to your point of, I don't want to say to the point of the workflow is where's the efficiency, where's the inefficiency, and how do we maximize or minimize the inefficiency and maximize the efficiency? You and I had this conversation when we were talking about that small shift that I made in incoming calls as sales. I couldn't necessarily bring myself to say, how can I help you? Because that to me felt disingenuous about being able, maybe I couldn't help them. Maybe I didn't have the answer. Maybe I couldn't, but what information can I get for you was more of the, let them ask the question before you assume that they even have a question. They may have called the wrong number. So by saying, good afternoon, Aaron Peters with Tech Squared, how can I help you? They're like, I didn't mean odd, interaction there versus good afternoon, Aaron Peters with Tech Squared. What information can I get for you? They're like, oh, I didn't mean to call you. I meant, so that it opens up. It's kind of that open-ended question, just as thank you for calling Tech Squared. This is Sean. That is an open-ended question and kind of an invite into what you're trying to get efficiency-wise.
And I have literally printed 8.5 by 11 and taped it to monitors. Only answer this way. Thank you for calling Tech Squared. This is Sean. And I have 2 staff members. One always adds, how can I help you? And the other one, what information can I get for you? And you're correct. The reasoning behind it is to create the open-ended, right? And so as a leader, that follow-up, that inspection process, is that enough of a deviation that I retrain? Is it enough of a deviation that I discipline? Or is it a minor enough thing? Is it close enough that I don't address it? Right? Because leadership is all about relationships, and it's all about guiding and growing. Too many people think it's about discipline. Now, there are times that if it's not done well and not done the way it is documented, it does create a difficult situation. We had an engineer that simply would not enter time. We require time to be on time every time, meaning the minute that work is done, you have not finished the work until you've documented the work, which is done through a time entry. And that engineer was eventually released. There were several rounds of training and coaching in an attempt to bring that behavior into compliance with documentation. Some call it rehabilitation, but the intent being, right? And there are some, the idea here in talking about workflows, some of my notes are, what is it that McDonald's, Taco Bell, Arby's, what are they known for? Why are they so popular? Why are there thousands of these places versus your 3 and 4 location restaurant? What sets them apart? Is it the food quality?
No, it's the repeatability. It's the, I know what I'm going to get every time, no matter what I order from where.
Correct. And what does that create? Number one, if you go to McDonald's, it doesn't matter where it is. The chances of that being within, a small margin, 4 or 5% difference of exactly what you would get from a McDonald's on the other side of the country is extremely high. So it creates consistency and it creates standards. And what does that consistency create? It creates efficiency, right? How many laborers at McDonald's would you suggest are paid $30 an hour?
I don't know that they have any of that.
Why? Because the point in creating workflows, part of the benefit of creating workflows is it allows you to do the best job possible as defined by the workflow with less skilled labor.
Mhm.
The other is the best job possible with less cost, less waste. If my consistency, my standards say that on every cheeseburger I put 2 pickles, but I have someone putting on 3 pickles every single time, how much does that cost me over thousands of restaurants, over tens of thousands of cheeseburgers? So the benefit of workflows is, as we see here, a fully documented, repeatable process. And what happens as people start to trust that process? How many times, hate to admit it, how many times have I gone to McDonald's or Arby's or Taco Bell? Why? Because I know what I'm going to get.
Mhm.
With a business, regardless, medical care, there's obviously some difficulty in a repeatable process for a doctor. So, what does that require? A very high level of education, a very high level of uh, laborer in that role, because there's only so much that can be defined as a repeatable process.
Do you run the risk, and this is where I can imagine an organization pushing back on workflows, something I've heard at other organizations are something to the effect of, well, we don't want to rule by policy and we don't want to manage from policy. You know, it's a, to me, it feels, and forgive me, I'm more process oriented. So this workflow process makes sense. I'm one of those rare few that love documenting and writing out processes so I know what to expect at the end. But there seem to be a lot more, well, we want work from anywhere. We want, what does that workflow look like as far as logging in, logging out, getting work,
Yes,
uh,
very
what,
common.
what does it look like to have somebody say, well, our workflows are user defined and we don't wish to manage from policy because then that feels dictatorial.
And so, this is where you run into the language. They are operating, choosing to operate, which is okay. The business can operate however they like. They are operating in an operational maturity level defined as muscle and feel. It will create challenges with consistency. It will create challenges with efficiency. Why does it create challenges with efficiency? Because someone may disagree and attempt to do it a different way. When you asked earlier about expenses, if there is no consistent approach, how much extra time does it take? There is a conversation. If you had to ask me every time you needed approval for an expense or reimbursement for an expense, or you had to ask the accounting department every time, how much efficiency is lost there?
Oh, and that's what we're looking at, not just efficiency, but a lot of times what we're seeing now is, um, and it's kind of funny to me because I look at workflows as being okay, very process-oriented robotic drive toward march towards efficiency. But in that, you minimize and rule out not only to your point of inconsistencies and inefficiencies, but you also are able to rule out insecurities or gaps and holes in your security process. There's a whole lot of conversation now about CEOs sending out a text message to get gift cards. Well, we all know it's not the CEO, but does it happen? Yes. And they're like, well, you sent me this. Well, that's not our process whereby gift cards are procured or obtained. So why would you do that? And that's kind of what I'm looking at. Yes, it may feel like you're trying, and I can get behind somebody saying this because I am so very straight line, this is the process, A to B to C to D. But at the same time, it eliminates the need for creative analytic processes that could be wrong. Well, yeah, he is busy in a meeting, so I'll just go ahead and use a company card to get the gift card. No, that's not our process. Why would you do that?
And
So
so, yes,
you build in security.
there definitely can be boundaries and security as a part of it. So I hear you asking a couple of questions. Um, there are a lot of folks that do not like the very corporate feel of a client or an interaction with a vendor that is so strict in their process that there is no latitude for any creative decision making. Good example. The warranty lemon law buyback process for a car company. There is very little flexibility in that. And so people despise the process. And so I'll back into it, but that tends to operational maturity adds definitions of what good looks like. There are stages of a business as they are growing in their operational maturity that very much fall over onto the other side of too much process. To your point, there's a lot of paperwork, very dictatorial. Do it this way, don't do it any other way. And the book Predictable Success speaks very much to that. There is a point where the business is so process oriented that there is very little, if any, innovation.
Mhm.
And one of the biggest challenges for businesses is finding that balance, right? As a business grows, why do small businesses, why are they so nimble? Why are they so adaptable? Because they have very little process. The scaling of a business, the more process is enacted, either through undocumented, but they're performing it, or the more documentation that comes in, the easier it is to scale that company. Why? Because they can repeat the process again and again and again. If they are just muscle and feel, they have to train the next person with the institutional knowledge on how to act muscle and feel, right? When is the last time that you walked into a restaurant that was not McDonald's and one time you visited, had a great experience, next time you visited was a horrible experience? I would suggest that we've all had that problem. And the difference is there is as a company starts to scale, the leadership that is required in order to create a consistent process is challenging. It takes a more determined leader to engage that level of process. And there's a balance there, right? The idea that everything is going to 100% fit into that process, not going to happen. The idea being, can you create a process that handles 90% of what is going on, right? 90% of it, and then the 10% is your exception.
Well, that's a phrase that I was familiarized with years ago, was the exception proves the rule. So that, the exception is well outside the rule. You can see it from a mile away, like, okay, we need to do something different. We don't need to refine our process for that exception. We just need to understand why that is an exception.
And so
And
I will share one, I will share an area where Tech Squared went through this. We have a process. If you give me a minute and have some patience, I can probably find it. I want to show you. And
just one of those that I'm going to hang my head in shame and be like, yeah, my bad.
oh, well, this is a process, right? It is a rinse, repeat. And there are times that you get to the point and go, I don't need that any more complex. We will just sit there and let that run. If you noticed in the screen that I shared, some of these are at a 5. It's documented, it's repeated. We're leaving it alone. There are others. We need some work.
Yeah.
What I'm going to show you is some of what I highlighted down here. Ticket
Right,
triage. Ticket triage for us triage for us, excuse me, all right, I'm back. Ticket triage for us was a new process about 3 years ago, and it
okay.
splits between triage and dispatch. The benefit to this is effectively air traffic control. You can have a small airport or a small team of engineers, and they can land and take off, and it's not that big of a deal. As you start to increase the number of airplanes, you start to need air traffic control. And for the MSP, that tends to be, or triage dispatch starts to come into place when they start to get into the number of endpoints creates a number of tickets. And so the more organized and efficient and standardized the MSP is, triage can sometimes take a little bit longer, be a little bit further down the road because they don't have as many tickets. If it's a very, what we call noisy environment, it's needed sooner. And so if you can see my screen.
Still looking at the business systems assessment.
Okay. Stop. Share. All right, back to triage. Good.
Yes.
So this is the process, 2 different processes. Triage for us is getting the ticket ready to be worked by the engineer. Dispatch, choosing the engineer and scheduling the ticket. A smaller MSP, that can be the same person. Larger MSP, that may be two separate people. Our goal is to have this first part of the process done in 12 minutes or less. So, ticket comes into the board, review the ticket. If there's more than one request on the ticket saying, hey, I have a new employee, I need a phone extension, and I need a laptop. That's two separate things, two separate technical objectives. Verifying the company, the contact, updating the summary description. Have you ever had an email? The subject line said, call me. Doesn't tell you what they need. And so the triage role would update that summary description. Provision new laptop for employees starting Monday, right? So the engineer has an idea what's going on. Setting the impact, urgency, and priority. We have a different document that addresses impact, urgency, and priority. Those things are defined by how many people does it impact? Is it just one person? Is it a whole group of people? Is it the entire company? Urgency is how critical that is, right? It may be one person, so the impact is low, but if they can't process payroll for the whole company, that's pretty important, right? And so we take a measurement of that, and then we choose the board. We have multiple boards. Is it a help desk ticket? Is it a project ticket? Is it a monitoring ticket? And so the point is, it works through this process, and then you have decision points, right? Is this time and materials, or is it an agreement? If it's an agreement, full service agreement, where they're not going to get an extra invoice, it goes this way and avoids this whole decision process. Once it's on the board, now we have a little bit more to the process. Dispatch, which is, by definition, choosing the engineer and scheduling the ticket. My point to this is that dispatch for low priority and urgency tickets, we'll call it a priority 4. If an engineer reaches out to the client at the appropriate time, calls the client, cannot get in touch with the client, what happens is that ticket comes back to dispatch. They didn't answer, and they put that ticket back in line to be worked a little bit later. To your point of how strict it was. In wishing to have a white glove approach and really take care of our clients, we were getting a lot of pushback, a lot of concern from from engineers. And what that would do is we have a policy in a document on answering the phone that says we are not allowed to live transfer a phone call. Live transfer is reception picks it up. Hi, I'm looking for Aaron. Stand by. Aaron picks up the phone. Live transfer. All of the engineers are working on other things. We're landing other planes, right? So what we don't have is the live transfer where somebody can go, hey, I understand you have an entire line of planes that wants to land on this runway, but I need to land. We did have an exception process where if it was a priority one, the process was take the ticket, inform the client that this exception, this priority one, is going to be handed to the service manager, and they will have an update within 10 minutes as to who's going to be reaching out. For simply missed phone calls with the client, we were getting a lot of pushback about if they don't answer. We found our process of live call transfer was broken because the number of times we witnessed live call transfer happening was well beyond a 10% exception. Well beyond. So, from a leadership perspective, how did we go about it?
Back to
We
phase
got
two.
we got down to inspect, and we're going, why are we constantly having live call transfers? Now, we had different engineers. One, sure, send me the call, never fussed about it. Different behavior style engineer went, why are you always interrupting my work?
Mhm.
My process says put it back in the queue and I'll get to it the next time around. I can't help it that they don't answer the call. So what we had to do is go back and look and go, okay, customization, going, let's open up this process. Is this a role? Is this a person? Or is this a problem? Did our process completely miss this? Or do we have somebody that is simply refusing to follow the process? And while there is an element of that, the question is this something that is creating enough exceptions that if we can tweak this just a little bit, it will allow the process to again cover 90-95% of the situations that we run into. And so I don't know if I can find it, but what we did is effectively what we got into is this is a dispatch problem, triage, answering the phone. Short answer, and we can have another conversation about it. What we did is when we unpacked that, it required leadership. We went to dispatch, service manager, owner, all sat down and said, let's walk through the dispatch process. Why are we doing live call transfers? And the point was to understand. The point was not to get someone in trouble. Someone was making a muscle and feel decision that we had a process to cover. Where we ended up was not in a do it this way or else. While that was an option, what we decided to do, because the reality is, if we're looking for a white glove approach to our clients, if they're busy folks, they're working on stuff, they are processing something on their side, they're doing work, they're doing business, they're not simply sitting around. As much as we would love for them to be sitting around just going, okay, Tech Square going to call in the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to wait. Maybe they're in a bathroom break. Point being, our process was updated with two pieces. The engineer puts the ticket in working issue now, which allows him to begin the ticket, reaches out to the client. If he cannot get in touch with the client, does not leave a voicemail saying, please call me back. That was language that was being used by some of the engineers because they want to be helpful. They want to fix the problem. It was causing, because of language, undocumented language, their intent was good. We want to help the client. So we stopped and said, no more voicemails on the first call. Do not ask them to call you back. 5-minute timer in your head is fine. 5-minute timer, call them back a second time. If you do not reach the client on that second attempt, chances of them being in the bathroom for, more than 5 minutes is low. Chances of them being in the middle of a process that they can't stop for 5 minutes, low. And they've likely seen the caller ID. Call them back in 5 minutes. If you cannot reach them again, leave a voicemail calling you on ticket 12345. Sorry I missed you. If you would please reach back out to dispatch and either allow them to schedule a firm time for us to call, or let us know if is there a better number to call. Would you like a firm scheduled appointment, or otherwise I will simply reach back out when the ticket comes back through the queue. The important part.
There's no arbitrary call me back. Hey,
Correct.
I'll hang out.
There was no call me back, I'll wait, which created live call transfers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we asked for dispatch, so stop communicating, call me back. Do not leave a voicemail on the first attempt. 3, leave a voicemail asking them to call dispatch so it can be rescheduled. The dispatch side. Dispatch, when they inevitably get the call that the client says, I just missed a call from Aaron. Dispatch language changed. Did they leave a voicemail? No, they didn't. Then let's hang up, give them 2 or 3 minutes. Chances are they'll call you right back. If they go, yeah, they left me a voice message, told me to call them back. Now, we don't know that that's accurate.
Right.
We don't know that it's inaccurate. However, we know that if they left a voicemail, they tried to call the client twice. For whatever reason, they did not pick up the phone, and thus dispatch, if they left a voicemail, dispatch reschedules and can either stick it at the back of the queue so that as it comes forward, they'll get it again. They can assign it to another engineer who has more availability, or they can schedule a firm time. Are you available at a different time? Yes, I'm available tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Okay, we will schedule a firm appointment for 2 o'clock. The point being, we flexed that process. We then trained that process, and then we then launched that new process. And I can't remember the last time I heard somebody asking about live call transfer.
So to the earlier comment that even getting to phase 5 is not the end all be all, done with that, move along. That workflow continues to evolve and develop with scale and iteration of process, which
and
is
changes in the economy and changes in the environment, right? It can be a number of things that allow you to go back and look at that again, right? Several things. There are some things you look at and go, no, this is not broken. This is, Johnny won't stop putting 3 pickles on the hamburger, no matter how many times we train Johnny to stop putting, to only put 2 pickles. All right, it's got to go.
Yep.
Right. So is it a process that needs some updating? because you're looking to lower the exceptions. Is it a process that is, what is it that is causing the exceptions?
Well, like you said, there's plenty more, because this is what business is all about, is iteration, innovation, and how to get better at it. And that's what we're here for. I don't want to elongate this, because we could go on, as you said, for hours and
Sure.
have
This is
myriad
this is
different
enough for now,
discussions.
right?
Yeah.
There's operational maturity in so many different areas,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And the challenge is it's rare that you jump all the way to the other end of the spectrum, right? You don't go from no process to
Right.
fully
Right.
documented and repeatable, right? You're going
Right.
to work through those different stages, right? Okay, we don't have anything. Okay, muscle and feel, we're talking about it. We're doing it on occasion because it doesn't come up often. Okay, this is happening more. We have a verbal process that we've communicated, but we're not measuring exceptions because we haven't defined what good looks like, to defining what good looks like so that it's partially documented. We're working on it. And then the last step is fully documented and repeatable. And you have people involved in every stage of it. So
Which
it's a
makes it all
it's
the more fun.
it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But it's been fascinating to me over the last 3 years, as we have spent a lot of time focusing on internal operational maturity, how much more efficient our operational team has become. It's been fascinating to me. And what does that allow us to do? It allows us to help more people, which allows us to have more clients, which allows us to have a little more revenue, which then allows us to do more things for staff, right? Be it, right, we were able to update our PTO policy to add another week. Why? Because we had the efficiency that we knew we could afford to do that. So uh, it's amazing to me the benefit, and a lot of the benefit to me is not just the process. It's the going through and stepping through the process that allows us to really identify areas where uh, efficiency can be improved. And it's not just about, whipping people into shape. It's about living the vision and the mission of the company. It's not just about, all right, answer the phone this way, right? There's a reason behind doing it that way that allows us to communicate a certain thing, which allows us to accomplish a certain thing. And the businesses, it's a choice, right? If we're perfectly happy where we're at and we don't wish to scale anymore or help more people, that's okay. If we do wish to help more people and protect more of the vulnerable, then where do we find that efficiency? Right? Is it in our operational process? Is it in our sales process? Is it in our lead generation process? There's a lot behind it that you work on a little bit at a time.
Yeah. Man, Sean, thank you very much for your time and the insights into how Tech Squared operates from, the workflow perspective and operational maturity and growing efficiency, not only in the business, but also in people. Really appreciate your insights, and I look forward to the next conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for the time, brother man. I really
Yeah, well
appreciate it. It
spent.
was a good
Take care.
time.
Have a great one.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Bye.